Coach Prime and the Colorado Buffaloes down Matt Rhule and the Nebraska Cornhuskers, improving to 2-0 and sending a message to college football fans everywhere that Coach Prime and the Buffaloes have arrived. Today, we need to give an instant reaction to this game because just a few days ago I released a preview and prediction video on this game and I had picked the Colorado Buffaloes to come out on top. However, now that the game is in the books, we need to talk about it. And before we can, as always, y'all know the drill, I have got to hear from you. Hop down to the comments, let me know what you thought about this game. Let me know what you saw and what impressed you. Can't wait to hear from all of you. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe. Hit that bell notification as I do constant college football content and you don't want to miss any of it. But having said all that, let's jump right into this. And one of the things I talked about in that preview and prediction video was that I was excited to see best on best. And what I meant when I said that is I thought the best part of the Nebraska Cornhuskers team thus far was that defense. And I thought the best part of the Colorado team thus far was their offense. And we got to see a phenomenal showdown between offensive coordinator Sean Lewis and Nebraska defensive coordinator Tony White. During the first half of this game, Nebraska was relentless in their pressure. They weren't allowing Colorado to establish any sort of rhythm on offense, though as the game went on, you saw what an experienced and talented quarterback Rhule Sanders was, because he never wavered. It didn't matter how much pressure Nebraska was able to generate on Sanders. He stood in the pocket and delivered strike after strike. Even with a pass rusher bearing down on him, he was sitting there wheeling and dealing, and it was hyper impressive to see. To put into perspective how impressive he was, during the first half, he was 14 of 21 for 134 yards and 1 touchdown. All the while, the Colorado rush attack was having a hard time getting much generated because of the pressure Nebraska kept sending. However, after halftime, Rhule Sanders was 17 of 21, 211 yards, 1 touchdown through the air, 1 on the ground. He was very, very impressive. And like I said, it was his ability to remain calm while there was a complete storm around him. That's what instantly stood out to me. We talked about this after the TCU win, that we can talk a lot about the athletic ability Rhule Sanders possesses because he is a very athletic quarterback. He has got a very gifted arm. But to me, what's standing out the most is the football IQ he's putting on display. Yes, there were times today where he probably should have thrown the ball away, but you know what he's not doing? He's not making bad decisions once he throws the ball. He's not putting the ball up in harm's way. He's not throwing interceptions. He's looking for plays to be made, and he's going to find his rhythm, and we saw that today. Even if you're sending a lot of pressure at him, he's going to be able to weather the storm and make smart decisions. And if you're a Colorado fan, you have got to be hyper impressed by your quarterback's production from last week into this week, where last week we were questioning what kind of TCU defense they faced. This week we knew the Nebraska defense was a solid unit. We knew this was probably the best area of the Cornhuskers team, and Nebraska showed that during the first half where they were relentless. Hats off to the Cornhuskers. How many times were they able to get Rhule Sanders uncomfortable, get him to move out the pocket, and they were able to maintain their coverage downfield? It was impressive. However, you saw the veteran nature of Rhule Sanders being able to sit there, not be taken back by that, not get down by the pressure being there, not be thrown off by the coverage being good. He stayed calm, he stayed even, and it paid off throughout the game. The other thing you saw is the talented wide receivers that Colorado has. We talked about this a lot. Nebraska's DBs were in good positions a lot tonight, but there's only so much you can ask your defense to do if you're not able to generate anything offensively. And once again, we saw the Nebraska offense be able to do absolutely nothing, though we'll cover that a little bit more when we flip the script and talk about that matchup, the matchup of the Nebraska Cornhusker offense against this Colorado defense. We saw good coverage from the secondary from Nebraska for much of this game, but we have got to give credit where it's due. There's a lot of playmakers on that Colorado wide receiver room. I mean, you're talking Jimmy Horn Jr., you're talking Weaver, you're talking Travis Hunter, Dylan Edwards getting active as a wide receiver. There's a lot of options, and at the helm, you have a quarterback that, like I keep saying, is not making mistakes, is wheeling and dealing, reading the defense, and making all the right decisions. So let's flip the script. Let's look at the Colorado defense against this Nebraska offense, because this is where I had the biggest question. I like the Colorado defense in terms of their starting depth. We've talked about this extensively, not even during this season, into the offseason. We were talking about how I liked a lot of the additions that Coach Prime was able to get through the transfer portal. Jordan Dominic had himself a game today, and I think that's going to be a trend you see continue throughout the season, because he came from a year from the Arkansas Razorbacks where he put up big numbers, and I think that's going to continue throughout this year. One thing we did see this Colorado defense do is play hard-nosed football. We know that the biggest question on Colorado is the depth of the defense. Not necessarily, in my opinion, even the starters. It's what do you have behind the starters and the twos and the threes when you need to get into a heavy rotation. Even then, they're showing they're talented players. It's all still so new. But what we saw today, you've got to tip your hat towards. One, we knew that this Nebraska offense was hobbled. They don't have much in terms of a passing game, and even if they did, it's hard to generate a passing game against that Colorado secondary. If you're someone who's questioning the Colorado defense, I'd bet money your questions aren't in the secondary, your questions are up front. And even then, I would tell you I like a lot of the starters up front in that Colorado defense, and today they showed it. Because we knew that Nebraska was going to try and generate the run through a power rush attack. And in fairness, if we look, Nebraska was able to average 5.41 yards per carry. However, and I think that this is important to note, there was a big run within the final 2 minutes of that game where a running back was able to generate 44 yards. And if we remove that from the analysis, Colorado's defense was able to hold Nebraska to 4.45 yards per carry. Important to note that they completely shut down any semblance of a passing game. They were able to make Nebraska one-dimensional. One of the things we talked about heading into this game is whichever team will force the other team to play their brand of football will come out victorious. And that was the beautiful thing about the chaos we saw in the first half. It was a back-and-forth fight to see which team would relent and end up falling into the other team's brand of football. Eventually, we saw Colorado had the much steadier hand. They were able to push forward through the adversity, push forward through the dry spots, and push forward through the pressure that Deion Sanders was getting. Ladies and gentlemen, he was sacked 8 times today, and that doesn't even do justice the amount of pressure Nebraska was able to generate on him. And I'm not saying he had a perfect day, but what I'm saying is when you have a quarterback that was pressured that many times, sacked that many times, for him to go 31 of 42 for 393 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 rush touchdown, you can't ask anything else from it. 2 weeks in a row, Deion Sanders is putting college football on notice, and the Colorado Buffaloes improved to 2-0, getting their first home win of the Coach Prime era, and what a home win for it to be, against a rival, Matt Rhule and the Nebraska Cornhuskers, a program that's also doing a rebuild, but went about it in an entirely different way. And right now, it's hard to question the way Coach Prime went about this rebuild when the Colorado Buffaloes are sitting at 2-0 in 2 games that many people across college football would have picked them to lose. They go to Colorado State next week in a game you already know we're going to be talking about, but how can you not be impressed with what you've seen thus far from Coach Prime and the Colorado Buffaloes? Today, they hit adversity and they worked through it. You can think it wasn't a great Nebraska team, and that may be true, but what we saw was a quarterback in Deion Sanders remain calm, cool, and collected through the fire and pass for almost 400 yards and look pretty good while doing it. Hop down to the comments. Let me know what you're thinking about this game. Colorado's on an insane start to the season. You love to see it. This hype is great for college football. It's great for the Pac-12 while it's still alive, and even better for the Big 12, who's looking at these teams about to come into their conference saying, we made some really good moves. Can't wait to hear from all of you. Hop down to the comments. Let me know what you're thinking. That's it. See ya.